Pay attention to the people in the tent surrounding Charlie.
We're going to get started, everybody. You know how it works. Put hands off to the lane tonight. We thought that was great. Really appreciate it. We're going to be here for a couple hours.
Okay, did you catch that? I'll show you in slow motion. The security guy in the blue and Charlie's bodyguard in the tent looked at their watch simultaneously, which my guess would be they received some kind of alert that I'm guessing Charlie's entire security crew got. So what kind of alert would they get? Could it be some type of signal? I've seen the videos people have posted of others, including the bodyguard in the tent, giving what looked to be hand signals seconds before the shooting.
.3006 bolt-action rifle, one rooftop, one shot, and within 33 hours, the manhunt concluded, with Tyler Robinson in custody. But what if I told you the story is far from over? What if the man arrested wasn't the man who pulled the trigger? New video evidence suggests something deeply disturbing. Not just that Tyler Robinson may have been framed, but that the people hired to protect Charlie Kirk might have played a role in setting him up. There are growing claims that surveillance footage was intentionally withheld, that messages were fabricated to build a case, and most alarmingly, that Charlie Kirk's own security detail created the perfect conditions for an assassination. Minimal screening, gaps in rooftop access, radio silence at the critical moment. Coincidence or coordination? Tonight, we'll break down what the public was shown, what the cameras actually captured, and who had the power to cover it up. The deeper we go, the more this looks less like a political hit and more like an inside job. Bell if you believe in truth over narrative. Hit that like button right now so we can push deeper into this story together. Hello, I'm Captain Joaquim, forensic analyst and true crime commentator. And tonight, we're not just following a murder investigation. We're unpacking what could be one of the most tightly controlled cover-ups in modern American political history. On September 10th, 2025, conservative figure Charlie Kirk was assassinated during a public event at Utah Valley University. Within 48 hours, authorities had their suspect, Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old student with no criminal record and no known history of violence. But the case isn't that simple. This episode draws on a mix of sources, publicly released documents, leaked footage, eyewitness statements, tech denials, and theories gaining serious traction online. Some of what you'll hear is verified, some is unconfirmed, and some challenges the official version entirely. This is not an official investigation. I'm not a prosecutor, and I'm not your defense attorney. What I am is someone who follows the evidence, not the narrative.
And right now, that evidence is pointing in one very uncomfortable direction. Charlie Kirk's own security team may have known more than they've let on. Stay sharp. This story has layers, and the deeper you dig, the darker it gets. Let's zoom out and ask the question that matters most. What really happened that day? There are three competing theories in circulation right now. Each has its own strengths, gaps, and implications. Let's look at them logically. Theory A: Tyler Robinson is the lone shooter. This is the official version and the one prosecutors are expected to argue in court. The case against Robinson includes digital communications, Discord messages, alleged group chats, where he reportedly spoke about political violence in vague but disturbing terms. The rifle recovered has his DNA. His online browsing history shows searches for vantage points near UVU. He surrendered peacefully, which prosecutors interpret as a sign of guilt or possibly panic. This theory is clean, linear, and familiar. It makes law enforcement look efficient. But it also requires some questionable leaps. How did a 22-year-old sneak a .3006 bolt-action rifle undetected to a rooftop in daylight hours on a university campus? Why have portions of the surveillance footage never been released to the public? And if the digital trail is so conclusive, why are parts of it redacted in the probable cause filing? That brings us to a second, darker possibility. Theory B. Robinson was a patsy. Someone else pulled the trigger and Robinson was set up. This theory suggests the rifle, messages, or other evidence was planted, manipulated, or selectively released to cast Robinson as the lone shooter. Motive? Maybe someone needed a scapegoat to avoid embarrassment or accountability. Maybe Robinson was politically convenient, or simply vulnerable. This version explains a lot of the inconsistencies. Why early police dispatches contradicted later timelines. Why Kirk's security detail had blind spots in coverage. Why the only footage we've seen was from bystanders, not official campus cameras. But the weakness here is obvious. If Robinson was framed, who actually fired the shot? Where is the second shooter? And why hasn't anyone inside the investigation stepped forward? Still, this theory gains traction every time a new hole opens in the official version of events. Theory C. There was insider involvement, specifically from someone on Charlie Kirk's security team or event staff. This is the most explosive theory. It suggests someone within the protective framework, whether private security, venue coordinators, or contracted logistics, enabled the attack. Either by allowing rooftop access, altering video feeds, or even assisting in post-event cover-up. In this version, Tyler Robinson may or may not be involved at all. Maybe he's the fall guy. Or maybe he was manipulated into being in the right place at the right time, so evidence could be tied to him. This theory is nuanced but disturbingly plausible. At high-profile political events, every inch of security is choreographed. So when things fail, it's either gross negligence or intentional. The problem, proving collaboration inside a security team, is extremely difficult. You'd need whistleblowers, leaked emails, badge records, video audit logs, things few people have access to. But if even a fraction of that emerges, the entire case breaks open. So how do these theories compare? Asterisk Theory A is the most straightforward, but every unexplained detail weakens it. Asterisk Theory B introduces more speculation, but makes sense of the missing footage, inconsistencies, and forensic gaps. Asterisk Theory C is the most chilling, a frame job with institutional complicity. Harder to prove, but it accounts for everything the official version avoids. So what do you think? Which theory best explains all the facts and all the things we haven't been told? If you believe the official story leaves too many unanswered questions, drop a comment below with your theory, and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep following this case as it unfolds. Let's move from the theories to the hard evidence, at least. The evidence the public has been allowed to see. Because for all the speculation, this case will rise or fall on what's tangible. The rifle, the rounds, the texts, the video, the security logs. First, the rifle and ammunition. Investigators say they recovered a .3006 bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel not far from the rooftop where the shot was fired. On both fired and unfired rounds, they discovered something unusual. Engraved inscriptions. Phrases like, "Hey, fascist, catch?" Notices Boljo, "What's this?" Bella Char, and "If you read this, you are Gale now." This is not standard behavior for a political assassin. It reads more like taunting graffiti or a planted calling card. Laboratory analysis reported DNA consistent with Tyler Robinson on the rifle's trigger, 2 of 3 unfired cartridges, and the towel itself. But consistent with does not always mean exclusive to, and without full chain of custody documentation, contamination can't be ruled out. That's exactly what the defense is expected to argue. Second, the digital and text evidence. Prosecutors claim Robinson exchanged texts with his romantic partner and roommate before and after the shooting. In one message, he allegedly instructs the roommate to look under my keyboard, where police later found a note reading, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." In other texts, he reportedly wrote things like, "I am stuck in Orem. Gotta grab my rifle still, and I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints." Governor Spencer Cox and law enforcement went further, saying Discord messages supported the rifle plan. But then Discord itself publicly denied that Robinson used its platform to plan the attack. That's a direct contradiction, one that, in any courtroom, would demand an explanation. Third, the surveillance and video footage. According to official statements, UVU surveillance captured Robinson arriving on campus in a Dodge Challenger, wearing a maroon t-shirt, shorts, and a hat clothing later associated with him. But critics point out that additional footage, such as a door cam allegedly showing the shooter in the company of a woman, has never been released by the FBI. Others have noted blurry images and time-stamp discrepancies between the footage of his arrival and the time the shot was fired. If there's nothing to hide, why not release everything? Fourth, security protocols at the event. Reports say only 6 police officers were assigned to secure the event with minimal screening and no metal detectors, despite hosting one of the most polarizing political figures in America. Some commentators have suggested that this was not merely negligent, but potentially deliberate understaffing, leaving the event vulnerable or even facilitating a breach. Finally, eyewitness accounts and public statements. One spectator, Keenan Cantrell, claimed he was just 50 feet from the stage. He's criticized what he called obvious lapses in security. And then there's Candace Owens, who has gone on record asserting that Robinson was framed, that video was withheld, texts were fabricated, and the narrative tightly controlled. Again, her claims remain unverified, but her criticisms echo the same question many of you are asking right now. How could so many things go wrong at once unless someone wanted them to? If this evidence makes you question the official story, don't just scroll past it, like and comment your biggest unanswered question below. Your engagement helps push this analysis to more people who need to see it. Whenever a case this politically charged enters the public consciousness, misinformation spreads faster, often than the facts. Leaks surface, narratives compete, algorithms amplify the loudest voice, not the most credible one. So let's talk about source credibility, because knowing who to trust might be the difference between truth and propaganda. Let's start with Candace Owens. She's been vocal from the very beginning, claiming Tyler Robinson was framed, that the texts were fabricated, and that federal authorities, including the FBI, have actively withheld key footage, a forensic consistency and chain of custody. Let's start with the DNA evidence. Authorities have said DNA consistent with Robinson was found on the trigger, towel, and ammunition. But the phrase consistent with is not the same as definitively matched. That's a legal nuance prosecutors don't want you focusing on. Was the chain of custody rock solid? Were control samples taken? Was the evidence stored, logged, and tested without contamination? If anyone else, law enforcement, responders, or even bystanders handled the weapon or towel before DNA was swabbed, that alone could give the defense leverage, bullet inscriptions, and intent. Now let's talk about the engraved bullets. This might be the strangest detail in the entire case. The phrases etched into the cartridges read like memes or cryptic taunts. Bella Ciao, if you read this. You are Gail Mao, hey fascist. Catch? It's theatrical, almost cartoonish. Does it suggest premeditation? Maybe. But it could just as easily suggest tampering, because if you were trying to frame someone as a deranged political extremist, this is exactly the kind of absurd detail that would go viral. If those inscriptions were added after the bullets were recovered, or if they were staged for media narrative, it could be game over for the prosecution, weapon movement, and timeline problems. Now, let's address what might be the most physically implausible part of the official story: the movement of the rifle after the single shot. Witnesses reported seeing a person jump or descend from the rooftop, but there's no footage clearly showing them carrying a long weapon. A bolt action .3006 isn't exactly subtle. You don't just tuck it under your shirt and jog away. So the question is, how did the weapon get from that rooftop to a wooded area behind campus, wrapped in a towel, without anyone noticing? Was it stashed ahead of time? Was it handed off to someone else? Or is it possible Robinson never had the weapon to begin with? Reddit threads have dug into this timeline heavily, with some suggesting the rifle was reassembled later or planted entirely. If that's even partially true, it undermines the entire physical evidence chain. Discord and text message reliability. Digital evidence is always a double-edged sword. Prosecutors say Robinson sent texts implicating himself, including the infamous line, "I might have to abandon the rifle and hope they don't find prints," and the note found under his keyboard supposedly read, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." But here's the problem. Discord, the platform where planning allegedly took place, has publicly denied Robinson ever used it for that purpose. That's not a minor contradiction. That's a direct challenge to the prosecution's foundational claim. And if the texts were scripted, fabricated, or planted especially, the note under the keyboard, it becomes a classic false confession scenario. Ask yourself, if you were planning a political assassination, would you write a note admitting it and hide it under your own keyboard? This evidence is easy to fake. harder to authenticate. Surveillance footage and withheld video. Here's where the case veers into shadow territory. Authorities say Robinson was seen on campus. Footage driving a Dodge Challenger and wearing specific clothing. Fine. But what about the footage we haven't seen? Some sources claim a door cam. Video exists showing the shooter, accompanied by a woman, but that footage has never been released. Others point to timeline discrepancies and inconsistencies in what footage was made public versus what was described in warrants. If there's nothing to hide, why hide anything at all? And if footage exists that points to a second individual, the case against Robinson doesn't just fall apart, it explodes. Security oversight or inside access? One of the most damning angles of this case isn't forensic at all, it's logistical. At a time when public events are under constant threat, Charlie Kirk's UVU event had no metal detectors, no bag searches, and just 6 police officers assigned for security. For a nationally controversial political figure, that's not just negligent, it's suspicious. Because someone had to approve that level of exposure, and someone had to know the weak points in coverage. If that someone was inside the security apparatus or event coordination staff, it adds a layer of complicity most people aren't ready to confront. B. Weighing the evidence. So, let's zoom out. From a prosecutor's perspective, the narrative is compelling. Asterisk text messages equals confession. Asterisk DNA equals physical tie to weapon. Asterisk surveillance equals location match. Asterisk surrender equals guilt. But from a defense perspective, every link in that chain can be contested. Asterisk text messages? Possibly fabricated. Asterisk DNA? Contaminated or planted. Asterisk video? Selectively edited or withheld. Asterisk weapon movement? Physically implausible. This case, for all its headlines, is not airtight. It relies heavily on digital evidence, assumed guilt, and controlled narrative. And in court, that's a risk. Absolutely. Here's your narrator script for Section 6. Legal implications and what would hold in court approximately equals 1430 to 1630. Written in the same tone as your previous segment's methodical, expert, calm, and curious, with a focus on how this case could actually play out in a courtroom. Now let's ask the critical question. If this case goes to trial, who actually has the stronger position? What pieces of evidence are likely to survive cross-examination, and which ones could fall apart under pressure? A. Prosecution strengths and potential hurdles. From the prosecution's standpoint, the surface looks strong. They have what appears to be a cohesive narrative built on asterisk a rifle with DNA reportedly tied to Robinson. Asterisk text messages that read like a confession. Asterisk a found note under a keyboard outlining motive. Asterisk and a short timeline between the shooting and the suspect's surrender. All of that plays well in headlines. All of it builds a picture of intent and guilt. But in court, it's not about the picture, it's about the integrity of each piece. The first hurdle, chain of custody. If even one link in the handling of the rifle, towel, or bullets is broken, if evidence was logged late, mislabeled, or tested after unverified contact, it opens the door for reasonable doubt. Second, the digital evidence. The defense will demand asterisk metadata, asterisk server logs, asterisk IP tracing, asterisk and sworn statements from Discord, text service providers, and forensic analysts. And don't forget, Discord has already publicly denied that Robinson used its platform to plan anything. That contradiction will be front and center. Third, video suppression. If the defense can prove that relevant footage was withheld, cropped, or never turned over, they may argue that the entire narrative was selectively constructed. That's not just a legal problem, it's a trust issue for the jury. Finally, alternative theories. Even if the prosecution's story is plausible, plausible isn't proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And if the defense presents a credible third-party scenario or raises the specter of planted evidence, bad faith, or institutional cover-up, it only takes one skeptical juror to derail a conviction. B. Defense strategy. So what would the defense do? They'll go surgical. First, they'll demand full discovery, all camera footage, text logs, metadata, Discord server data, and unredacted police documents. Anything short of full transparency will be used to argue suppression or manipulation. Next, they'll bring in expert witnesses, asterisk forensic digital analysts, to challenge the authenticity of the texts and timestamps, asterisk ballistics specialists to explain why the rifle movement doesn't make sense, asterisk chain of custody experts to explore contamination risks. Then, they'll attack weak links. Asterisk the engraved bullets, a detail so strange it could be interpreted as a setup. Asterisk the note under the keyboard, an alleged confession that may have no forensic grounding. Asterisk and the timeline inconsistencies, video versus testimony, arrival time versus rifle location. They'll also press hard on the Discord contradiction and argue that without digital certainty, the state's narrative is guesswork. Finally, they'll cross-examine law enforcement and government witnesses to expose any inconsistencies, withheld information, or press overreach. Because here's the truth: emotionally charged, high-profile cases are rarely decided by what plays in the media. They're decided by procedure, proof, and precision. And in that courtroom, the burden is on the prosecution to prove, not to persuade. Let's revisit what we've laid out tonight. 1. The official narrative is clear. Tyler Robinson, acting alone, planned and executed the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The state says it has the DNA, the texts, the surveillance, and the motive, too. But there are serious inconsistencies, gaps in how the weapon moved, unexplained delays or omissions in releasing video footage, digital platforms contradicting the government, and strange, even theatrical bullet inscriptions that raise more questions than they answer. 3. Alternate theories from framing to inside assistance to security complicity aren't just plausible. In some ways, they better explain the evidence we haven't seen than the story we've been told. 4. And legally, this case isn't bulletproof. If any link in the chain fails, whether it's the digital trail, the DNA integrity, or the surveillance footage, a conviction could collapse under pressure. Now I want to hear from you. Which theory do you think best fits the facts? Was Tyler Robinson the lone shooter? Or was he set up, either by someone close to him or someone in power? And what piece of evidence do you think deserves the most scrutiny? Drop your verdict in the comments, and let's debate this civilly but fiercely. Thank you for watching and thinking critically with me. Until next time, stay sharp, question everything, and demand the full picture, not just the narrative.